Okay, now let's look at a cubic regression problem. Here we have data that models that represents the number of people after the year 2000 that are living in poverty. Notice that these values are in the millions. Okay, so this represents 31.1 million people. Find the cubic regression function that models the data with x equal number of years after 2000 and y equal to the number of millions of people. So that means we need to subtract 2000 from all of the x's and then enter that in our table. And then in the second column in our table, we want to enter all of the y's. Now, when we do that, we want to be sure that after we do that, we want to get the regression equation stored in our y equals screen. One way to do that is if your calculator comes up when you pick cubic regression. Let me get my calculator here for you. Stat, calculate, cubic regression. When you go to that page, you may get an option like this. If it comes up like this, that means your x's are in list 1, y's are in list 2. Your frequency, unless there's something there, is 1. And you have the option of telling it where to store the regression equation. We want to store the regression equation in y1. So I'm going to arrow down, and right there beside it, I'm going to go to vars, and then arrow over to y variables. Under function, select y1. Now your calculator may have come up looking like this, cubic regression. And if it just says cubic regression there before you press enter, call up y1 the same way I just did by pressing the vars button and arrowing over to y vars and function and pick 1. Before you do either of these, be sure that you clear your y equals screen. Otherwise, it's just going to put that equation at the end of whatever you had in there. Okay, so there's my regression equation. Remember, MyLabs Plus will tell you where to round it to, so be careful about your rounding. Here I've said to round this one to the nearest tenth. So here is my regression equation. Y equals 0.06 x to the third minus 0.83 x squared plus 3.64 x plus 30.86. That represents the how many million people are below the poverty level. Now, we also can look at the graph of this function. If we look at the graph of this function, we've got to be sure to set a good window for this. Once you have your data in your y equals, you can set your window to match it by turning your stat plot on. Stat plot is second y equals, turning it on, and then you want to choose the scatter plot. You want your x's in list 1 and your y's in list 2. And when you do that and press enter, it will set the window to match your data, and it will also graph the line on top of the data. And you can see here, when these line up, that means you have a very good fit. Almost every data point marked by the little squares here is falling on my line. So we can see how good the model fits. And then the last instructions are to use the model to estimate the number of people below the poverty level in 2008. To get the most precise answer, we don't want to round the model. We want to use the entire model that's in our calculator. So we would go to our table and put in that x value of 8. The x value of 8 is because, remember, our x represented years after 2000. So we have to do 2008 minus 2000 to get our x. So when we use 8, plug in 8 into the function or look it up in the table, we get 39.86 million people.